Hey, it's Mike Brennan, and we're back with another MI Tech TV show. And this month is our monthly ITC Energy Report. And I'm going to pull up his bio here. I just went over it before the show started. But this is Vinit Gupta, and Vinit is the Vice President of Operations for ITC-Holdings. And in this role, he's responsible for control room and system operations that support ITC's four operating companies, plus safety, human resources, security, emergency preparedness, and response, and is the company's North American Reliability Corporation compliance officers. I imagine that kind of keeps you a little busy, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's quite the portfolio there. Jeez.
It is.
All right. In this segment of the ITC Energy Report, we're going to talk about why it's important to have a reliable transmission grid. Well, it's always important to keep the power flowing as we move into the summer months. ITC works hard to ensure the grid is summer ready. And so let me ask the first question. So, Vinit, would you mind kicking things off, reminding our viewers who ITC is and providing a brief overview of your role in the company, other than what I just said?
Sure. So I think I would like to start to give a basic understanding of how our power grid works in the country. It's primarily three big components where power is produced, that's generation, transmission, where it flows long distance, and distribution, the wires that bring it to our homes. So we at ITC are the transmission company. We're the nation's largest transmission company. So we pick up the power from where it's produced and bring it to the cities, to neighborhoods, and then the local utilities, which are DTE, consumers, and many others in other states, tap power from us and provide it to homes and businesses. I like to use the example of highways and roads, kind of think of it in terms of where the highways connecting cities to cities, and your local utility company is the roads that brings you to your home when you take the exit off the highway. My role, I think, as Mike said, is that I am Vice President Operations for ITC. So I oversee the 24/7 grid operations, safety, human performance, security, and many other functions. We're a regulated company, North American Electric Reliability Corporation. That is a federal agency that regulates us. So that's where I am the compliance officer for ITC.
So thanks for that, Vinit. Today's topic is about grid reliability. So let's start with the basics. What is ITC's definition of grid reliability?
Sure. So I'll give you ITC's definition. There is an industry definition by NERC that's a little bit of a mouthful, a lot of complicated terms. So if I were to put it in simple terms, for ITC, for reliability to us is to minimize power interruptions to customers that can be caused by any transmission assets that we own or operate. So normal day to day, any single line that goes out or any poles that falls down because of a lightning or wind blowing, that should not cause any interruption. People shouldn't even feel it or worry about it. That to us is reliability. NERC says it in a different language, says, any unanticipated loss of system element, they call it credible contingencies, which what it means is credible is like, you have a lightning strike, you have wind blowing, causing faults, those kind of things. And grid should function without having any of those problems. So that's to us is reliability. 24/7 grid operating, providing power, one or two lines trip, things happen, system keeps working.
Okay, so Vinit, what is ITC's process for assuring reliability? How does ITC monitor the grid?
So we take a three-step process. I kind of put it in three words to ensure reliability. I call it build, maintain, and operate. So when we build the grid, when we build transmission lines and substation and our assets, we make sure we build it to withstand all the weather conditions that we see in our footprint. We look at the worst conditions, we look at the average conditions and kind of find the right balance. I mean, in the last couple of years, y'all have seen some of the worst weather conditions that were unforeseen are showing up, like the tornado 3 days ago in Gaylord, Michigan, right? So, and then we maintain it. We do continuous maintenance, follow a structured program to make sure we can see the things before they fail. Anything in the grid that fails, we can see it and correct it before it fails. Then we operate 24/7. We're running the grid by looking at every 5 minutes, our system operators in control room, which you guys were talking about, are looking at the system conditions and running computer simulation and seeing, well, this line trips out, what's going to happen to system? So whatever problems they see, they correct it before that line or generator trips out. So we're always operating a step ahead, making sure that if things happen, we're already prepared, system is already positioned to maintain it. We also, in terms of our transmission maintenance, we conduct very regularly scheduled testing and inspections. We do helicopter flyouts, we do foot patrols to monitor system. We have alarms in place on our equipment that sends alarm to control room telling, hey, you got a transformer that is need attention, or you got a breaker that's low on gas. Somebody needs to go out and check on it. So we'll send people to take care of it. So basically, for us showing reliability, one of the other things we do that I haven't seen done in a lot of other utilities is every single line outage that happens in our footprint or substation asset, we look at it every month. We review it, we discuss it, we make sure that we don't categorize it as an unknown. Very few outages are unknown. We keep digging until we find what caused it. So we know what's the cause and we can make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, so how do you measure reliability? And more importantly, perhaps, how does Michigan's transmission system stack up against other areas of the country in terms of reliability?
So reliability, many measures. The most simple and easiest that makes sense to people is number of unplanned circuit outages, right? So we got a whole lot of lines and transformers and equipment. How many of them unplanned outages, which we don't plan to take for maintenance, happen? And if you take that ratio with the total circuits, that kind of gives us a good idea of how reliable our system is. In fact, in ITC in Michigan, we reduced the average number of power outages by 50% in the ITC system, that's Detroit and the surrounding neighborhoods, and about 25% if you look at the west and north side of the state. That's a lot of the Consumers Energy distribution service area. So since we acquired those systems, nationally, we do participate in programs where we submit our data on how many outages we had every year. And typically every year, our Michigan systems are ranked either in top 25%, we call it top quartile. A lot of times they're ranked in top 10% in the nation systems.
Okay, so people know they will sometimes experience power issues with bad weather. And how do you prepare for that?
Many things we do. So number one, as I mentioned, 24/7 monitoring of the system. What we're doing is we're looking at the system today. We're looking at the system, how it's going to be tomorrow. We call it a next day system planning. We're looking at the system, how it would look like a week from now or 10 days from now. We're going that far out, running analysis and seeing, okay, tomorrow supposed to have high temperature. We're going to have these load issues. Let's run analysis of studies and have a plan. We call it operating plan, ready to implement if those conditions were to happen. We also do from outside operations, continuous maintenance, proactive maintenance, 100% of the maintenance all the time, scheduled inspection at substations, lines, making sure that anything that's about to go out, we can catch it and not let it fail. You could actually, you mentioned bad weather, if I were to go back and think the last couple of major windstorms Michigan had, I think one in 2019, and then we had a million people out in Michigan. Transmission system, we only had a couple of line outages with no customers out. So that again goes back to our process of build, maintain, and operate. We build it right, we maintain it right, we operate it right. So the bad weather, we can sustain it. We also do emergency drills. Every year we do at least 1 or 2 weather or emergency drills because you could do it better when things are not hitting you. And we practice that. How are we going to restore the system if things go out?
Right. Well, I know a lot of the problems with down trees and power lines happens in the last mile, right? And that's not you folks, that's the local utility.
Yeah.
And where you have the really big high power, high voltage lines, there's much fewer trees around those and generally a cleared right of way all around it, right? That's part of the reliability.
Yeah, so I'm glad you reminded me of that. So the vegetation program is a pretty big piece of our maintenance. We make sure that the vegetation is maintained within our right of way. There are strict guidelines that are specified by regulators. We look for what type of trees can grow in our right of way so that they don't cause power outages. I know people don't like removing trees, but it is a balancing act. We want to make sure that we don't have invasive trees in our right of way. We do around our power lines, we build corridors with a lot of trees which are outside right of way, trails and some of those to make it more usable and environment friendly so people can use it, but to maintain power 24/7. We absolutely make sure the vegetation inspections happen regularly and tree trimming happens.
Well, I suppose it helps to have towers that are 100 feet high or whatever the height level is. Don't get too many trees in Michigan 100 feet high, luckily, right?
No, I think it's a lot of time. It's if anything, our vegetation outages is a tree limb or something flying outside our right of way and making contact. Within our right of way, we rarely have outages because we maintain it.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be flying with the helicopter crew as it flies over the lines. One of my favorite things to do. I invited your boss to come along because Simon likes to do it as well, but unfortunately, he wasn't available for tomorrow morning. So I'll be shooting video of that, what it's like to fly over high power lines at very low speed, or very low levels at very high speeds. Very exhilarating. So
yeah, it is a good experience. In fact, before moving to operations, I used to run engineering side, and we used to coordinate a lot of those flights. We do something called LiDAR surveys of our lines and inspections to make sure that there is nothing growing underneath the lines. Somebody hasn't built something under our lines. Those kind of things we make sure.
does that happen sometimes where people just ignore the right of way thing and they'll put something up under your lines? Does that happen very often?
It has happened, not very often, but once or twice it has happened. So we have to, notice it, take action, advise people to clear it. But yes.
Okay.
All right, so we've talked about how the grid is now. I'd like to get your opinion in that of ITC on what we could do to improve it. How can we make the grid better?
So the key thing, in my opinion, is, everybody knows grid is an interconnected system. So if we want to improve it, we got to build it. We got to make sure that it's more sustainable and resilient, and there is redundancy. In fact, if you look at it, Michigan, we import power most of the time. A lot of power comes from other states to us. So to make our power reliable, the more better infrastructure we build, the lines we build to bring power to Michigan will make it more reliable. There's a lot of generation, if you look at in areas where there is not a lot of load. Like you go to rural Kansas or Iowa and some of those areas, a lot of wind generation, not a lot of load. Where the load is in suburban Detroit and all those areas where there's not a lot of wind generation or other. So building the grid, redundancy, bringing power lines from where power is generated is one of the key, and then keep it resilient. I call resiliency, to me, is as important as reliability, is our ability to restore the grid when it breaks down really quick. So if something falls apart, we're able to put it back together quickly.
Okay. Well, we are running out of time, so we have to ask that question. How can folks learn more about ITC Holdings?
Well, we have an excellent website. That's https www.itc-holdings.com, and there is a section called Operational Excellence on there. You can read a lot about it, like basics of power and what we're doing to make Michigan's grid better and more reliable.